Good afternoon and welcome to the Washoe County District Board of Health regularly scheduled monthly meeting. Today is Thursday, April 27th. And first off, we have roll call and determination of quorum. Madam Clerk.
Chair Jung,
Present.
Dr. Novak,
Here.
Oscar Delgado,
Here.
Dr. Hess,
Here.
Christopher Dare, Michael Brown.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
You're welcome.
Next up is the Pledge of Allegiance. And if I could get Mr. Cutts to lead us, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Cutts. Madam Clerk, do we have public comment?
Not at this time, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. Agenda item number 4 is the approval of today's agenda. Are there any changes or deletions?
Move to approve.
I have a motion by Novak, a second by Delgado. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Mr. District Health Officer, will you take item 5, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Next, we have recognitions, and I'd like to begin with years of service. We have several people who unfortunately cannot be here today. Mr. Schaefer, I'm actually glad he can't be here because he is somewhere in Ireland right now.
Nice.
So good for him. He's our vector coordinator with 15 years of service with the health district in EHS. Next, we do have here Erin Dixon. I'd like to recognize Ms. Dixon for her 15 years of service. She's public health supervisor in CCHS. If you could maybe stand so people know, everyone knows who you are,
Erin.
And then stick around and we'll do pictures following this. And then we have Maricela Caballero, who is not able to be here today with 20 years of service. She's a human services support specialist in CCHS. And then Mr. Philip Uliberry, also not with us here today, has 25 years of experience now with the Health District, our Public Health Communications Program Manager. We do have a new hire, and so I'd like to introduce you to Susan Hopkins. And Susan, if you could stand up. Susan is new as a Office Assistant 2 with Environmental Health Services. And since I am now acting for our retired Mr. Sack, I would like to introduce her to you. She is serving at the front counter, and she has 12 years of previous experience with the FBI, and most recently she came to us from alternate sentencing. So I think it's she's got great experience working with a lot of individuals with diverse backgrounds, and she's going to do a great job for us at the counter there. So thanks, Susan. If you could stick around, we'll get a picture with you also. And then we have a promotion of Mike Crawford, and there's Mike in the back. Thanks for standing up, Mike. Mike is being promoted from an Air Quality Specialist 1 to an Air Quality Specialist 2, obviously with our Air Quality Management Division. So congratulations to you, Mike. We'll get your picture as well. Thanks. And then we have a reclassification, which is a promotion of Carmen Mendoza. And I don't see Carmen here today. I'm sure she's busy at work in our vital statistics office with birth and death certificates. But she has been doing a fantastic job there. We had a retirement of Sandy Bridges, who was that office support specialist position. And so we've moved Carmen Mendoza into that role. And then a resignation, Tim Boutron has resigned from, he was an office assistant too, actually with CCHS. I see it says EPHP here, but had worked with us for 12 years. And congratulations to Mr. Boutron. He's one of the people that I think we saw this coming, are taking advantage of new opportunities that some of the advanced manufacturing firms are bringing to the area.
Good.
Yeah.
Always happy to see that.
That's the recognitions that I have, so maybe we can take a moment and get some pictures.
Take some photos.
Are you here to take pictures, Steve? Is somebody here for Phil? Oh, you are, oh, well, so we got to get your picture taken. I had me confused. Okay.
Do a selfie, Aaron. Aaron Dixon, you don't look old enough to work here this long.
Okay, Madam Chair, where's the sticker?
Oh, well, they got rid of it, so it's just in front of here. Aaron, do you want to go first? Can you have somebody do it for you?
Yes, I'll have her certificate.
How's it going? 15 years? Proud of you.
Congratulations.
Certificate for you, too.
One, two, three. I'll do another one. All right. He's really doing self. Yeah, really.
Stick around.
Susan?
Susan, congratulations.
I feel like
Happy to have you.
she can get a picture with me.
Okay. One, two, three. One, two, three. There we go. Great.
You're the resident rock star, huh? How are you, Chief? Thanks.
You were good. That's
Happy to hear that. It's hard on the whole family.
Oh, yeah.
We are the toughest.
no doubt about
We
that.
are. Congratulations to everybody, and as I said to our brand-new employee, may she have many happy years here with the Health District. Next are consent items. Does anybody have anything that they would like to pull out of consent? If not, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
I have a motion by Novak, a second by Hess. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Item 7 is the presentation of the draft plans for the 2040 Regional Transportation Plan and the Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan. Miss Amy Cummings. Hi, Amy.
Thank you so much. Amy Cummings with RTC. I really appreciate you being willing to talk with me today about the Regional Transportation Plan. We are now in our public comment period through May 18th, and the draft is available on the RTC website. If anyone would like a printed copy, just let me know. We can certainly bring that over to you as well. We will be having a public hearing on May 18th at the RTC board when it's brought to that body for action. We had a public hearing public meeting earlier this week and received some good feedback there. And here I'm today just to get any comments that you may have. I know some of you have seen this presentation before, so I will try to not take too much of your time. And the clicker does not seem to be advancing. Oh. Well, in particular, I wanted to thank your staff. We could not do the RTP without the staff from the Health District for the air quality analysis, as well as incorporating many of the goals and principles for healthy living and active transportation. That's a key component of our regional transportation plan. Our number one guiding principle is to promote safe and healthy communities, as well as supporting sustainability and more travel choices for the region. And your staff have been really critical in helping pull all this together and share that information with the public. And yes, thank you so much. In particular, there is a lot of analysis that goes into the air quality conformity determination, and we have partnered very closely with Dan Inoue and Yanling Barnes on this technical analysis. RTC develops the vehicle miles of travel for different types of roadways, and then we worked with your folks to do the emissions analysis and measure that against the motor vehicle emissions budget, which is the MVEB that's in this table. So you can see that after all of that work, we are within the emissions budget for all of the model years in the RTP, so that keeps us in conformance with the state implementation plan, the SIP. So we're very happy about that. Some of the major things that contribute to this are our Complete Streets program. We're including active transportation elements in the vast majority of our projects, with the exception of the freeways, improvements on the freeways. We're making sure that we have pedestrian infrastructure, bicycle connectivity, so that there are options for active transportation, so people don't have to drive everywhere they want to go. And of course, our transit program is another great way for people to get out of their cars, so that we can continue to meet our emissions standards as set forth in the SIP. And could you advance it? It doesn't seem to be advancing again this time. One of the aspects of our transit program that we're particularly excited about is our zero-emission electric bus program, and I want to express our appreciation to the District Board of Health for your support as we have applied for grants to bring these zero-emission buses to the region. We have 4 that are currently operating. We're going to get 5 more within the next year to operate on 4th Street and Prater Way. And we have a big bus replacement scheduled as our buses, get 500, 600,000 miles. We do try to replace those, and we're working on ordering additional electric buses to replace those next 15 that are going to be on order. And we are in the process of reconfiguring our Villanova bus maintenance facility so that we can maintain and charge all of those electric buses. So that is under construction right now, and should be done by the end of the year. In the RTP, we have annual funding for ADA improvements, as well as bike and pedestrian facility improvements, upgrading intersections, traffic signals, and maintaining our pavement. So that's the slurry seals, pavement reconstruction, and pavement rehabilitation. We also have a series of both capacity improvements and complete streets livability-focused projects that don't add roadway capacity. We know we do have growing traffic congestion, so we're working to address that, but to also balance it with making these livability improvements that also support economic growth in terms of making our community walkable, bikeable, and vibrant. So I don't want to read off the list of projects. They are all available. We have a table in our plan that has descriptions of all the projects in here for each of the different time periods of the plan. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have about specific projects.
Are there any questions for Ms. Cummings?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you taking the time. Okay, that takes us to item number 8, which is Regional Emergency Medical Services Authority, presented by Mr. Varnox. And I know Romero isn't here because I don't see him. And I have to tell you guys something funny I did yesterday. I showed up at REMSA for your emergency appreciation awards and graduation. That's next month.
Yes,
But-
I'm glad you were early. Thank you,
I
Madam
was
Chair.
about a month early, but I want to let the board know, I saw both of these gentlemen in the parking lot, going to work, so they're not just figureheads either. They're actually there on the ground doing work, and they were both in their uniforms, so I was doing a little of my own undercover investigation on accident. So, but I will be there next month, I promise,
Great.
because I've already gone through the whole dress rehearsal.
Showing up early for parking is a good idea.
Yeah, I
A month
noticed
might
that.
be a little too
Your
much.
parking is a lot, yeah.
Good
Mr.
afternoon,
Von
Madam
Arx.
Chair, members of the board. Don Von Arx, Chief Operating Officer of REMSA. You should have in front of you our March compliance report. Happy to answer any questions you may have about that.
Any questions for Mr. Von Arx?
Not so far.
Not yet.
Good.
Okay. Let's take a motion on this. This is
I'll make a motion to accept as presented by Mr. Varnox.
Second.
I have a motion by Brown, second by Novak. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously.
Miss, I just have a
Councilman
quick
Dare.
question
Yeah,
for him.
Councilman.
I wanted to know, I know we implemented the paramedics portion of what we did in Sparks, and I know Rena's been doing some of that. I just didn't know if there was any effect in this last month. I think it all started, and I just wanted to see on your end, your report of what you think, how,
So in other words, if I understand your question, is you had implemented paramedics on some of the engines in
Yes.
Spark Fire. That would probably come down to more of a patient care level on scene versus the compliance.
Okay.
Compliance measures REMS's on-scene reliability.
Okay.
But I think JW and I could be happy to see if there's any anecdotal comments out there. I haven't heard anything, certainly nothing negative. But you're getting there in a timely manner with paramedics on board, and our crews are, I think, generally speaking, behind you, but not by much most of the time. So it's, I will do our best to try to find some quantitative answers or perhaps anecdotal ones for you.
it'd be nice to bring that back and be able to look
Yes,
at
be
the,
happy to.
addition.
Be happy to.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, Mr. Romero is on the mass casualty incident simulation
right.
today.
Right at the
I would like to announce that our Medical Communications Center received its 5th International Academy of Emergency Dispatch accreditation for Center of Excellence, 15th year in a row. And so it takes a lot of work. There's a lot of dedicated staff that goes into the CQI processes, the training, the procedures, et cetera. The IAED, the International Academies of Emergency Dispatches, also asked us to become a mentoring center. So those communication centers that wish to become ACE accredited can reach out to us, and we can share information with them and help them achieve that goal.
Congratulations.
Great, thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Dr. Hess has a question for you.
Well, yeah, actually, it's more
Dr.
a comment related to your question, where I've generally found information on how they're doing, and I've noticed that it seems like there's fewer negative comments recently, is where when you have, there's a thing here where there's patient inquiries and so forth. What's it called? It's called customer comments.
Customer
page.
comments.
And
Gotcha.
it seems to me, in watching this over several years, that you've been very truthfully honest in publishing these, so that
Sure.
I think that's been
Thank you.
helpful to me.
Yeah. Now, I will point out on this month is particularly short, and that was a shortcoming on EMS surveys, writing down those comments.
Yeah.
So we normally get about 20 to 30 comments, and probably, 5 or 10 are negative in context. So, but thank you. Appreciate it.
Not bad out of 6,200 calls.
That's not bad at all.
Chief Brown has a question.
Chief?
Not a question, but just a thank you and take back, please, to your staff. AB 85's going through its final hurdle today with a work meeting taking place down at the Senate. And I know the fire departments, along with the ambulance services throughout the state of Nevada, were very supportive of its education in schools for CPR
Yes.
and AED training. And everybody showed up, and I know Chief Cochran and other fire services administration and folks showed up in force, and that really helped get that bill through. So thank you, and please pass that on.
Thank you, Chief. I sure will. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Von Arx. Next, we have item number 9, which is the Regional Emergency Medical Services Advisory Board April meeting summary. And in lieu of Ms. Conti, we will have Ms. Heather Kerwin presenting.
Hello, Heather Kerwin, EMS Program Statistician on behalf of Christina Conti. In front of you, you do have the summary of the April 6th EMS Advisory Board meeting, and just a couple highlights Ms. Conti would like me to point out. We did receive approval for our semi-annual data analysis, which was attached, as well as a heat map, which is what you are seeing here. The heat map shows response times for the fiscal year 2015-2016 of over 34,000 matched calls, independent of which agency arrived first. This is from the initial call in the PSAP to the first arriving unit on scene. And so you have here, this map that's being shown right now shows you the difference between day calls and night calls. There's a little slider bar, and you can slide it back and forth and see the difference there and change. And it is live and available to the public now through our
Very
EMS
cool.
Oversight Program page. Additional highlights, under the 5-year strategic plan, you'll find 2 attachments, one regarding the ambulance franchise, response map review methodology, and the other is the process verification of Omega protocols. And if you have any questions, please let me know.
Where do we find this online, Ms. Kerwin?
The heat map is under the EMS, the Washoe County EMS Oversight Program home tab. No.
Okay.
Yes, and we can make the link directly available to you if that's the
Would you
easier.
mind? Yeah,
easier
I
way.
think we'd
Yeah,
like to
you bet.
monkey with that.
And the last highlight that we wanted to bring your attention to is that we have been meeting with regional partners to develop a PSA on appropriate use of 911. And so that is due to kick off during either National Police Week or National EMS Week mid-May. So we're excited about that.
Great.
All right.
Any questions for Ms. Kerwin? Thank you. This is not an action item. Appreciate you. Item number 10 is, however, this is our policy discussion and direction of staff regarding waiver of permit fees for properties affected by the North Valley's flooding. Mr. English, will you please take us away?
Yes, Madam Chairwoman, members of the board, James English, Environmental Health Specialist Supervisor. The board item I'm bringing in front of you is a policy discussion and request to potentially waive fees for this specific event. We have never actually done something along this lines before, so we're looking for direction on the board on whether or not this is appropriate and if the criteria we're using here is appropriate for this emergency response to assist these residents within Washoe County.
Thank you, Mr. English. I'll start down here. Any questions?
Yes, one is thank you for bringing this. I think that it's always good to step out and find ways to help. I do wonder, is any of this, would we see any of this come back with some of our emergency funding? Or is this something that once it's a loss, it's a loss?
From everything I can tell in the research I've done, this is going to be a loss. We will eat this within our general fund at these programs.
The flood FEMA money wouldn't cover this?
Potentially, it could be placed in as a claim. When we may see that would be a question that may take 7 to 10 years.
Okay. Chief Brown?
So, Mr. English, just, I see there's 25 properties potentially. Are all those within the footprint of where the declaration took place for the flooding issue?
Yes, they are. And we actually do not believe that all 25 of those homes would need permits or work done by the environmental health. So that's worst case scenario as it stands today.
So with that, I'm sure that the assessments were done by the state or the team that was out there on any type of damage and hazard mitigation issues that were coming up. Would they have already put in to submit for a FEMA claim if they went out? Because I know the state will come in behind these major incidences. They'll do an evaluation of what's taking place with the structures, property, and any involvement of such like sewers, septic systems, as well as wells. Do we know if that's been done? And
The original assessment was done by the USAR team during the actual first weekend of the event. After that, once the walls were put in place and the actual emergency response was mitigated, environmental health staff and Washoe County Building and Safety staff went ahead and did further assessments based on the original USAR data, and we went house to house. We looked at over 100 homes within the confines of the emergency declaration, and these 25 homes were actually posted by both the Health District and Washoe County Building and Safety. So I think we have done that, and that's all rolled up into all the reporting, and it's being tracked as both the original emergency response with the incident management team and also with the ongoing recovery team that's doing the follow-up to maintain what's been put in place to mitigate this emergency.
Dr. Novak?
Mr. Who is bringing this forward? Is this your department that's bringing this idea forward, or where's it coming from?
I guess I would have to say the citizens started it, looking for some assistance, and we were asked from the county manager's office to entertain this and whether or not it was possible to waive or exempt fees, of which we've done some research, and at the staff level and at the health officer level, we can't waive fees. So a joint concurrent item went last Tuesday to the BCC by Department Head Dave Solero of Community Services, and that's how we decided to do it jointly so that we would have it on the record for why we did this.
Okay. Do we have any estimate of what this could possibly cost?
I could quickly try to go ahead and do the math, but I would say worst case scenario is less than 20,000. Although we added one step that Washoe County CSD did not do. One of the items in here, and I probably should have highlighted it, is we're waiving all well abandonment fees if we can get homeowners to connect to the Tumwa community water system. We think that is a great benefit, very beneficial to the community on the public health side of things, because wells are extremely expensive. None of those wells can be re-drilled because we have community water out there currently. And we're concerned, and we've been trying to educate the public out there, that you could spend multiple thousands of dollars to try to rehab your well and get it to operate and provide safe and clean and clear water, but you may not actually be able to do that. Whereas if you could take that same few $1,000s and put it towards connecting to Tumwa, we think that's a much better avenue, instead of possibly spending $3,000 or $4,000 getting nowhere and then having to do that. When Washoe County had the water system out there, when they've actually already laid all the water lines in every one of those streets and run laterals to each property line. So we've talked to Tumwa. Everyone seems to think this is a great idea to go ahead and go forward. So we may eat more time and resources there, but well abandonments take very little time on our end. And we are currently talking with Tumwa to see if possibly they could assist us in some of that oversight. It's more of a paper process, and if we could line up a few homes to be connected on the same day, a well driller can just go house to house and pour the concrete down the wells, and we would save staff time. So that is one place where I cannot estimate that cost, but I'm looking at both those subdivisions that are also outside the regional scope in some of the homes we assess, but we just think that's good public health policy.
Beyond the 20,000 also?
Potentially, there's a couple hundred homes out there. I highly doubt most of them will voluntarily connect to Tumwa, but we wanted to make it much more enticing to go ahead and do that.
Councilman Delgado.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A lot of my colleagues asked the questions for me, but just for clarity, permits all residential and business, or is this focused on just residential homes?
We don't have any I'm unaware of any damage to any commercial businesses.
Okay.
Now, there are some at-home business licenses in that area that may be affected, but it's for those residents that are out there.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Hess, do you have any questions?
No, everybody asked the questions
Okay.
I had already. There's more down.
One more.
I do have one more, I'm sorry.
Councilman?
And probably more directed at our attorney. Is there a precedent if we end up doing this, and then let's say we have flooding happening all over the place, and all of a sudden we set up something, and then we choose to not do it next time? Are we liable for saying yes to a larger issue?
That is an issue to be considered. This can be considered an initial consultation or initial discussion as to whether the board wants to set forth this policy, because there are potential liability issues in the future. And there needs to be strict parameters set up for what residences qualify. And in bringing this agenda item forth today, that was the hope that the board would have that discussion. And if needed, staff can go back and work on any recommendations that you have and bring it back before the board. When this did go before the Board of County Commissioners on Tuesday, and Madam Chair can speak to this, that was the direction that they gave, because they wanted to have very specific parameters as to when the waiver of fees would apply. The concept is the same with the Board of Health. You're looking at waiving fees that would then not account for the cost that the department is incurring in making its inspections and reviewing its plans, and whether that is a decision that would benefit the public is a question that should be answered. So there is the potential for future liability based on any decision you would make.
Right, and what we did on Tuesday, this was to waive the building permit fees. And we didn't take any action. We are asking for legal to research exactly that, what sort of legal situation could we get in the future at any other disaster. Another thing that we talked about was, so I hope you're working closely with Mr. Solaro, because that's going to be the same direction today for me, and that is there needs to be a timeline, and finite timeline, in terms of when this is available to these flood victims. Also, we have to be very clear that they must prove to us that their insurance has denied to cover that. And then also very important, it goes with the owner, not the property. So, if somebody comes up and buys this distressed house for cash, they don't then get these are for people that are staying and going to reside there. So those were the parameters that we gave. So I would expect Mr. English to work closely with Mr. Solaro so that we are speaking out of both sides of our mouth clearly to the people who will otherwise take advantage of this. And I will tell you, there are a few people there that have no insurance whatsoever. And it's only red or yellow tagged homes, and we have a complete list of who these people are. So that we want to make this as tight as we can to make sure there's no fraudulent behavior on the taxpayer's dime.
Yes,
Does anybody else have any other direction? Yeah, Chief Brown.
And just one more comment too. I think, when you're looking at criteria, if it was declared, through the state or through our president, through the staff, like a flood, fire and such, that way you stay away from the single incidents that take place where people come
Right.
asking for it, but it was actually declared. So just
It was
something
declared by President Trump as well.
that- exactly.
It's a good point. So let's keep that in mind when we're crafting the legality of that. Councilman?
I'll make a movement if.
I don't think we need a motion today. I think we were just all giving, am I right, Ms. Admiran?
It asks for a possible motion.
Madam Chair, you could give direction to staff and legal to come back
Okay.
Okay.
with a recommendation.
Okay, well then I'll move that the staff goes and looks at some of the criteria that was given here and give your best of how to do this, given that we protect ourselves in the future and also obviously try to stand with some of our people who have need.
Second.
I have a motion by Dare, a second by Brown. Any further discussion? Dr. Novak,
Do we want to add a timeline to this?
When to have it back.
next meeting? I think that's what
soon.
we, isn't that what we gave?
That works for me.
Yeah.
I do have one clarifying question.
Sure.
How do you want me to address the idea of the well abandonments to connect to community water?
I think it's a great idea. I think that the wells out there are unsustainable. That's a dry lake bed that will happen again sometime in the future, and as many people as we can get onto our community water program, the better we do at managing our water as well. So that's a public health issue as far as I'm concerned, unless anybody has a disagreement with that.
Shouldn't there be
Councilman
two
Dare?
different motions in that setting? I don't disagree.
Okay, let's wait. Let's finish this, though, because there's another question down here. No? Okay. So we have a motion and a second. We'll do the next, you want us to do the next one for the, separately?
You can do them separately,
Okay.
yes, Madam Chair.
We have a motion and a second regarding direction to staff to come back next month with the full policy vetted. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. I will also entertain a motion regarding the well abandonment incentive program for the federal disaster area. Who wants to make that motion?
Oh, I thought you. I'll move, I'll so move that we, let me make sure I word this right, that we work towards the abandonment of the well and hooking them to the Truckee Meadows water. Is that the movement you need?
Yep.
The motion you need?
Yep, I got a motion. I got a motion by Dare, a second by Delgado. Any further discussion? Dr. Novak? Vice Chairman Novak, I should say.
On this, are you looking for these well abandonment to be done by a certain time frame? I don't want to see, okay, this 3 years from now, yeah, we were in the disaster area. Oh, I think it would be a good time to do this. Are we looking for a finite time? You can do this in the next, 6 months. After that,
I guess I'm thinking I'll bring that back as a separate staff report, and I would say it would need to be done by December 31st, 2017. because I think we would like to do that as efficiently as possible in planning with Tumwa and being able to go right down the streets, connect homes, abandoned wells. And it takes about 60 to 90 days from when a resident starts the well abandonment process till they're connected to Tumwa and the well is actually abandoned. So I think that's a good time frame.
If you
But
can put that in your thing to go along with his motion, I think that, I'm happy with that.
Okay, Dr. Hess was next.
Yeah, do we need to include anything that this would only apply to homes within the presidentially declared disaster area?
They'll bring that when they come back.
Oh,
in the-
okay.
Right, right.
Yeah,
That's a good point, though, but let's make sure that that is, and will you share that with Mr. Solaro as well? Because I don't think we've got to that point with the Board of
Okay, sure.
Commissioners.
I will. I met with him right before this meeting briefly, so I have the 7 points of direction that he was provided on Tuesday.
figured you
So
would.
we'll work hand in hand.
Okay, and then was there another question, Councilman Dare?
What if somebody does not want to do this?
Does not want to connect to the,
I own a home, I don't want to do it.
then that's your option. The problem will end up being is that if the residential well cannot operate and provide safe water, we have no enforcement authority to force them to connect, but they will never, state law will not allow them to drill another well. So their only option would be to connect to Tumwa at this point in time. They're the water service provider for that area.
Lots of it.
Any other questions? Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously.
Thank you for the
Mr. District,
direction.
thank you, Mr. English. Mr. District Health Officer, this is the item 11, presentation and possible acceptance of a progress report on the 2016 to 2018 strategic plan and adjustment to progress reporting schedule.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got some PowerPoint slides that I wanted to use to run through for you where we're at with the strategic plan. We began implementing our strategic plan July, and so this is our report for the 3/4 of the way through the first year. Just as a reminder, during the strategic planning retreat workshop, we worked on a vision, mission, values, and strategic direction for the health district. And I feel very comfortable continuing with these. We identified 6 strategic priorities, and thought those were in the slide deck, but I don't see them there. Okay, I got them mixed up. There we go. So 6 strategic priorities: healthy lives, healthy environment, local culture of health, impactful partnership, financial stability, and organizational capacity that we're working around. And then could you go back to that last slide? Thank you, Ms. Rogers. And so under those, we developed 17 district goals, 53 measurable outcomes, and 90 initiatives that we're implementing to achieve those outcomes and those goals. Next slide. We put together an action plan, and this came back to the board and was approved, in which we structured this so under each goal we've got each priority we have the goals identified, we have the outcomes that we want to achieve under those goals, and then the specific initiatives that we are implementing to achieve those with target dates for accomplishing them. And we're using a dashboard system that On Strategy has developed, and this is where we're at now as far as our completed goals and outcomes. This means that we are at a place where we're meeting the outcomes that we had wanted to achieve in reducing the negative health and economic impacts of obesity and nutrition. I think you went forward one there. Okay. Protecting people from negative environmental impacts. This is based on our achievement of the air quality targets that we wanted to hit. The raising the awareness of the Washoe County Health District and public health is based on the media campaigns that we've launched and the number of media articles and website hits that we've got. informing the community of the important health trends, of posting of reports that we've got on the website. I think it jumped forward again more.
No, it didn't. Oh, yeah, it did. You're not going to read them all, are you?
Okay. And then we're, this 3.4.1, we've got 4 different supporting initiatives that are going on: the Community Health Improvement Plan that we heard about, the Ozone Advance program, the Family Health Festivals, and the Collaborating for Communities projects that we're doing in conjunction with C4C. So this gives you a flavor of how we're tracking our goals and outcomes.
Excuse me, Mr. District Health. Can you send that to us? Because I don't think we have a copy.
Certainly.
Thank you.
And then as far as the completed initiatives, we're also against those 90 initiatives, and I think that's the next slide, tracking our progress against the initiatives that we've accomplished. I think we've got 17 of those that we've accomplished so far. Remember, this is a plan that runs through 2020, so I think we're making very good progress under the plan. You can go to the next slide with that. This is another feature of the On Strategy software of looking at our progress, where we can look at individuals that are responsible for certain initiatives and how they're doing and where we're at. So we're mostly in the green on target or achieved. We have a few items that we've deferred just because it doesn't make sense to be working on those right now. Some that we haven't started because they're further out in that multi-year timeline. We've got a few that are off target. I can tell you my off target one is getting caught up with my evaluations for staff. And then we've got some that are waiting because they're dependent on somebody else. What's of note, and I'm happy with, is we don't have anything in that critical column that anybody's doing. Also want to recognize that Dave McNinch has picked up the lead for environmental health services for the strategic planning stuff with Bob Sachs' retirement. So
Good.
Additional thing that he's doing. So as I mentioned, we'll be implementing the strategic plan through 2020. We'll be continuing to track and measure our progress, and we're going to work in areas to improve performance where outcomes are not being met. I am in the midst of working on some of my staff evaluations. So one of the items that I'd like to get direction from the board on is, rather than bring this as a quarterly item, it feels like there's a lot of work going on, and I'm not sure that it makes sense to try to bring it back quarterly, but maybe to report semi-annually, so a mid-year and then an end of fiscal year report. And if the board is agreeable to that, I think I'll still end up doing another report next quarter to give you that end of fiscal year report. But I would propose to push that to August, because it's kind of a mad scramble at the end of the month to try to get everything in through the On Strategy software to assess where we're at to be able to provide this report to you. So I propose we move to, I do a fiscal year report in August, and then the following February I do a mid-year update on the strategic plan.
Do you need a vote?
I have one, well.
Hang on a second.
I think you could do that if you wanted, or I could take that direction. I just also wanted to mention that we weren't able to get with On Strategy prior to this meeting. We actually have a meeting with them tomorrow to explore dates for a fall strategic workshop, probably a half day or less, sort of just to touch base, focus specifically on the strategic plan, make sure that we're still moving in the right direction, and see if we want to tweak things here or there. So I'll be bringing back some possible dates for that at the next board meeting for decision there.
Any questions, first of all, on the actual report itself? Does anybody have any concerns? Or I think it's great. Now, this is what Ms. Olson is providing us. Is that her
Yes.
software, or?
It is their software, and we're using the software. Sometimes it works well. Sometimes it's a hard fit to get a strategic plan to roll up like arithmetically into something.
Yes.
But it's what we're working with it, and it's at least providing us with a pretty good picture of where we're at.
Good dashboard.
With different
and
initiatives.
I like the personal accountability by name and
There's certainly, that's a huge piece of it, to be able to look at that.
Is this information?
Dr. Hess?
Is this information on the internet?
We do not have this on the internet now, but I could, well, the report actually is added to the packet, I believe, or you're going to do that after the meeting, Ms. Rogers?
Okay.
So that will be,
Yeah.
Send it to us digitally, it's fine.
well, and we'll do that as well, and it'll be part of the packet since we've presented that. So.
All right. Councilman Dare?
I have one, it has to do with the second thing he asked about every 6 months. I know the work into coming to us, I wouldn't necessarily be against that. My question, though, one of the things that this does when you guys have to do that is it makes everybody think about their goals. And so if you wait every 6 months, that actually probably, part of the reason I think you might be getting the results you are is because people have their names attached to it, and you're about to say, how are we doing, what's going, you know, there's something about that accountability for all of us. I mean, I don't want my name on that list, I don't think, so. No, I'm just kidding, but the idea is that, so I'd be concerned of possibly results, and I only say that if you could speak into that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to speak to that. We have this as a standing item on our division director meetings. So I meet with the division directors twice a month, and we talk about the strategic plan and the dashboard at those meetings. So this is going to be something we're continuing to do, but trying to wrap it around a report package sort of thing for the board would be the thing that would happen every 6 months.
Okay. I do need a motion to accept the report, and if you could put in that motion that we'll see him at the end of the fiscal year and then from then on semi-annually.
So moved, well put.
Second.
I have a motion by Novak, a second by Brown. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Mr. District Health Officer has a non-action item, a presentation of the effects of legalized recreational marijuana on health district programs and discussion of other potential public health impacts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I'm doing a lot of talking today. This was I brought this presentation forward in response to some board comments at the last meeting about getting some more information about recreational marijuana. And so I'm not claiming to be at all an expert on recreational marijuana, but I'm presenting to you what I was able to kind of pull together for informational purposes for you. Next slide, please. I'd like to, what I'll start with is how recreational marijuana facilities fall within our existing health district programs. And on air quality, next slide, we are regulating the cultivation, processing, and the testing labs. We have air quality permits that we issue. We've actually done some groundbreaking research with DRI in developing some potential for emissions factors that we can use to calculate what the VOCs that are coming off of grow operations are. Historically, there hadn't been research around what comes off of a cannabis plant. We looked at emissions that came from hops, which were somewhat similar to the plant to try to get some estimates, but we've also had DRI participating in doing some sampling in grow rooms to try to get some additional information there. So we are permitting through the air quality program, and we don't feel like we need any additional regulations in air to address recreational marijuana operations in the community. Air also is responsible for responding to odor complaints that are associated with any of these facilities. On the environmental health side, the environmental health has control of the waste management plans that need to be approved for the facilities that are cultivating, processing, or testing. So we have plans and systems in place with them to make sure that the materials that are coming out of those are properly managed and end up going into a proper disposal and not to somebody else for whatever purposes. We also apply our plan review requirements that we have for water system protection and wastewater disposal that come from these facilities, and we respond to complaints as well in those areas from citizens. So for those areas, we again feel like we've got sufficient regulations in place. I've got another slide here. Sorry, I got a lot of words on most of my slides, but this just gives you a picture of a couple of the cultivation facilities that we are we permit. So they're on the medical side, they're in the community already. On the recreational side, we expect we'll be just seeing more. And as far as environmental health on the food side of things, we have regulations in place that we feel are sufficient to regulate production activities if we were going to have facilities that are making edible marijuana products using marijuana as an ingredient, that we can regulate them under our existing food regulations to address the public safety of those requirements. And I would remind people that at the state level, they have a number of regulations that are in place that have to do with the quality of marijuana products, the type of herbicides and pesticides that could be used, and those sorts of things. So we've got that as a safety backstop with all of this as well. On the next, I'd like to talk about marijuana use and impacts to clients in our program areas. And in community health services, there is the impact that we have with marijuana and pregnancy. And so we're already involved in educating. There are parents that have a perception that it's all right to use marijuana for morning sickness. Yet the THC, that's the active ingredient in marijuana, can cross the placenta, and the fetus ends up with about a third of the levels that are found in the mother. In Colorado, they found that exposed newborns had a significant increase in THC concentrations after legalization of marijuana. This is consistent with a finding I'll have on a later slide that heavy users of marijuana use even more heavily once it's legalized. So there are risks of stillbirth, 2.3 times greater with that use, and then there's also the potential for behavioral functioning problems, inattention, impulsivity, subtle learning, and memory deficits. So it is a substance abuse problem that can impact babies if mothers are using during pregnancy. Then on the breastfeeding side, THC is accumulated in the fat and therefore in breast milk. And so it's not recommended that if women are using marijuana, they should not be breastfeeding, and that's the message that we're also communicating through our WIC program. On the secondhand marijuana smoke, it contains some of these heavy metals and more hydrogen cyanide than tobacco smoke, but the research on harmful effects of secondhand marijuana smoke is limited, is what I found. They have found effects on blood vessels as much as secondhand tobacco smoke, and that lasted longer in studies that were done with mice. But again, some limited data there, and I believe that's from the National Institutes of Health. But the exposure can produce detectable levels of THC in blood and urine and minor impairment. And we're promoting smoke-free environments, smoke-free housing through our tobacco funding. We don't have any funding specifically toward marijuana as a secondhand smoke exposure, but we do work that messaging in with what we're doing with tobacco, and we have apartment complexes that are going, no smoking of either. Other vulnerable populations, children exposed to edible marijuana products, people with schizophrenia are particularly could have increased problems with if they're using marijuana. There are a couple of genetic variants, AKT1 and COMT, that in people that those are occurring in increased risk of psychosis has been found for people that that have that and are using marijuana. And then adolescents are at risk of altered brain development and cognitive impairment from long-term heavy marijuana use. There was a study published in the New England Journal of Medicine. They found that about 9% of the study group that were long-term heavy users had these impacts. On motor vehicle safety, evidence is not robust. There was a meta-analysis of studies that revealed a near doubling of risks of drivers being involved in a collision resulting in serious injury or death. So that the 2 times factor is kind of the one that's commonly cited as the increased risk in driving from using marijuana. However, there was a National Highway Transportation Safety Administration case control study, and when they controlled for other factors, they didn't find an increase in crash risk. Potential risk levels for marijuana are much lower than alcohol intoxication and distracted driving. And next slide, please. I found this from they actually have a symposium now that they do in Washington to talk about these issues with recreational marijuana in the state of Washington. And this is from their traffic safety program. Just to give you a perspective, with alcohol impairment over 0.12, ranging from 20 times risk of accident up to 200 times. The distracted driving 3 times to 23 times. THC down at the bottom, that range of 2 to 4, and again, 2 is the one that really is most commonly cited. So 2 times is still twice as much, but what I saw in the rest of this Washington study was alcohol is really driving the accidents, and the high risk that you see from alcohol is reflected by the rate of accidents that happen with people that only have alcohol in their blood, people that have alcohol and THC in their blood, and people that have alcohol, THC, and other drugs in their blood, where they may have those drugs in their blood, but it's really driven by the alcohol content, it seems, for the high rates.
Hang on a second, let him finish the presentation. Thank you.
For overdoses, there's an increase in pediatric and pet overdoses associated with accidental ingestion of marijuana edibles. This can be due to inattention to dosage. Some of the marijuana is very high in THC content, but also if people are using edible products, there's a 2 to 3 hour delay in the effects happening, and so people may end up eating more because they're not feeling anything, and then they've eaten too much. Overdoses are not fatal, but they result in unease and shaking, and in rare cases, extreme psychotic reaction. The treatment is monitoring vital signs. In some serious cases, give a low-dose sedative and observe until the effects fade. And marijuana use disorder is long-term use can lead to marijuana use disorder. It's similar to other substance abuse disorders. On average, adults seeking treatment for marijuana use disorder have used marijuana nearly every day for more than 10 years and tried to quit more than 6 times. And people that have marijuana use disorder, especially adolescents, often suffer from other psychiatric disorders and may be also addicted to other substances. And so treatment is similar to alcohol and other substance abuse treatment. Other items of note, recreational marijuana legalization has not been found to increase use in adolescents in states where it's been legalized. That may be because what survey results show that about 80% of high school youth are saying that they have ready access to marijuana already. Recreational marijuana has not been found to increase crime rates. It is also, but it has been found to increase usage by heavy users. Recreational marijuana has been cited as a cause of increase in homelessness in Denver. But this was not found statewide, and it wasn't found in Washington State. And there hasn't really been any scientific or peer-reviewed papers that substantiate that increase in homelessness. It's anecdotal and cited in public media and by local officials, and so that's, I think, something that is not fully verified. Some legislation of note, SB 341 revises provisions relating to medical marijuana establishment, and that one, it establishes and regulates medical marijuana research facilities. So we've got a lot of now use of marijuana as a medicine. This would provide opportunities for Nevada to do more research and provide more scientific basis for that. But it also authorizes that fees that are imposed for medical marijuana establishments may be expended to support programs, provide education and outreach relating to safe use of marijuana and to prevent the abuse of marijuana. And then SB 487, there's a lot on this slide, but this one imposes an excise tax on the sale of marijuana and related products by retail marijuana stores. And this bill has got a proposed amendment that has been made by Senator Ratty, and it would provide 5% excise tax on retail sales, which may only be used to carry out alcohol and drug abuse programs to persons referred to the Nevada Division of Public and Behavioral Health by agencies that provide child welfare services. It also has a 5% excise tax on retail sales that would be distributed to local governments for the following purposes: to provide access, to increase access or provide mental health or substance abuse treatment, to support specialty courts, programs to provide positive alternatives for youth, and law enforcement. That 30% limit is for the portion that would go to counties. I don't think that limit is for cities. And cities would be able to use this for programs that provide the positive alternatives to youth and law enforcement. So this bill also has each county establishing an advisory committee on mental health and substance abuse that would provide recommendations on how this money would be used. And it also provides for cities and counties to impose a license tax. So just a couple of more slides. The governor has an executive order establishing a task force on the implementation of ballot question 2, the regulation and taxation of marijuana. And under that, they've organized a number of work groups, which you see here, that are to provide recommendations back to the governor by May 30th, so the end of next month. And then the American Public Health Association has identified the following strategies for dealing with recreational marijuana: age restrictions, taxation, time and date restrictions, retailer liability, standardizing testing and monitoring, warning labels, advertising restrictions, addressing impaired driving and passive exposures, and then monitoring and evaluating regulatory schemes. And I think we're seeing a lot of these that are already addressed through the medical marijuana program that we have, and are probably will be carrying forward to retail marijuana, and some that I think need some further work. Advertising restrictions, I think, may be one of them based on some of the billboards that I'm seeing around town.
We'll start down here. Councilman Dare.
Thank you. Very good report. I appreciate it. And can we get a copy of that too?
Absolutely.
Thank you. On the one slide, sorry to interrupt as I did, but I was is that post somebody when it would add the one slide about the driving, and is that after it was legalized? I didn't catch where that stat was from.
This was from the state of Washington.
Okay, so after.
Yeah, and I would have to go back and look. Let me confirm for you that it was after.
Okay.
I believe it was, but I don't want to misinform you.
And then my only other question is when it comes to the food, the edible portions, and I've heard rumors, and I don't know if they're true, and I definitely was something that I think would concern us, is what is being asked of these people putting this food together? Because obviously we have a lot of rules about who puts food together and what they do, but I've heard they're not the same standards to what we typically would have somebody else put. And I kind of assured the person that's not necessarily true just because of what we do, but then I kind of went back thinking, well, this is definitely a different world of marijuana, it seems these days, and so maybe I was mistaken.
Yeah, and we apply the same standards, or we will. We don't have any food production facilities in Washoe County at this time, the marijuana food production. So as those go into operation, it would be the same food standards that we apply to all other ones. So you were correct in what you were
I
saying.
think they were referring to California, and we don't do that here, but I think that's what they were talking about. So I was like, I don't know, so that's good to know. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions, comments? Councilman Delgado?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good presentation. Thank you, Kevin. The education component, you said that we were going to use funding that comes from the tobacco. Is that, did you say it or no?
That's the source of funding that we have right now for our chronic disease program.
Okay.
And so the purpose of that funding is to be working around educating around tobacco use and addressing secondhand smoke issues. And so we're using that funding and with our focus on tobacco to support being able to also dual message about marijuana smoke and secondhand environments and that sort of thing. So we don't really have a specifically dedicated chunk of money to use for marijuana education right now, but that's the way we're achieving that through that tobacco funding.
And another question is, when you had spoke about it earlier about nuisances or anything else related to smells and so forth, are we called on, or I know the city gets calls at times through our code enforcement, but I'm not sure if then the code enforcement calls the health district if there's, say, apartment complexes. Where does the concern, where does the call go?
That's a great question. And our regulatory authority is not for the air quality for odors inside an apartment building, but it would be for odors outside of a marijuana cultivation facility or processing facility. So we don't really have any authority for those apartment type complaints.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Dr. Hess?
Yes, I have a couple comments, and then I do have a question. When I was a kid in the 1950s, early 1950s, I can remember Camel ads on TV touting the health benefit effects of Camel cigarettes. And I'm concerned that we're going to probably, in 20 years, find the same thing with marijuana. And along that same vein, I'm not really, I'm in general, and it's probably from being a doc and taking care of people with problems with drugs, in general with mind-altering drugs. But putting that aside, I guess my other concern about smoking marijuana is its long-term effects. And you didn't mention that, or I missed it, I'm not sure which, but are we enforcing the same standards for smoke-free areas for marijuana as we are for other cigarette products? And then I think we've talked a little bit about vaping. I'm not sure where we finally have ended up on that.
I have some unfortunate news on vaping that I'll use for my next item
Oh,
on
okay.
the legislative
Go ahead.
update.
Yeah.
But on the applying the same Clean Indoor Air Act type regulations to marijuana smoke, my understanding is that that's one of the recommendations that is being developed by the work group under the governor's.
We don't have any county regulations either way
But
on this?
we don't have any county regulations
Oh, okay.
on that, and there hasn't been anything that's been introduced so far on adding the marijuana smoke to the Clean Indoor Air Act
okay.
in this session.
I have just something for you to, if you can come back with, because I bet you don't know this. Well, I shouldn't say I bet this. When they say that these newborns are born with THC in their system, were they testing in Colorado newborns before marijuana was either medical or recreationally legalized?
And I'll look into that, but I believe that it is the case because there was a comparison of the increase after the recreational
They
legalization.
do that all the time with traffic too, but they had never been studying it or collecting said data. So if you've never collected it and then you have 100 cases, they say that's 100 times more than it's ever been before. So
That
if you
was
could, if you could look
information
that
that we
up
got
for
from
me, please.
our fantastic chronic disease program, so I'll have them follow up with
Please do.
with that information.
And then I think this brings up a good point, and I hope you're in the discussions with both Reno City Manager, Sparks City Manager, and the Washoe County County Manager, in that with these fees and different ways we're trying to tack on to address the nexus of if there are any social ills that go with this. Shouldn't the health district be getting some of that money as well if we are in charge of air quality and WIC? And that might be a revenue source for us, rather than begging hat in hand like we do every year for a general fund transfer from the county.
Well, and just to follow on that, we are tracking our costs in the regulatory program because we believe that we may be able to be reimbursed from the state under the existing program that provides for paying for the cost of the medical marijuana program. And so we'll be exploring that both with the cities, but also we may be able to just go out to another pot at the state and not even have to touch the local money.
Good. That would be great. All right. Thank you very much. Great presentation. Item 13 is the update regarding the 2017 legislative session, which, by the way, I want to let this board know I will be down at the legislature on Friday. Just meet and greet with our county lobbyist, Alfredo Alonso, not monkeying with any bills or doing any lobbying outside of the purview of anything we've ever voted on, okay? It's common courtesy to let people know of your body that when you're going to go. That way, people aren't scrambling up and down the halls saying, what is she messing up now, right? So I wanted you to be aware of that. Go ahead, Mr. District Health Officer.
All right. Thank you. So, Mr. Brown knows better than I do that it's just been fast and furious the last week or so at the legislature. We've had since the last board meeting, we had the bill out of the first committee deadline that passed, and then just Tuesday, we had a bill out of the first House deadline. And so we do have for you, thanks to Ms. Rogers, a dashboarded table of bills that are in bill number order, and the dark shading across the entire bill means that bill is dead. It either didn't make it out of the first committee or the first House. I do have one correction on the table, and that is SB 196. Maybe next time let's put page numbers on these too. But SB 196, we had marked it as dead, and it is still alive. They just didn't get all the information properly entered into Nellis, and I believe Ms. Rogers spotted that. So 196 is not dead. A couple of things that I wanted to highlight for you. AB 193, the fluoridation of community water systems, that bill is dead. It didn't make it out of committee. My understanding was that there were the votes there, but it was not agendized. And then Dr. Hess had inquired about vaping and applying the Clean Indoor Air Act to that bill. There was AB 450 that was a bill that came out of the Interim Legislative Committee on Healthcare that would have done just that. And that bill didn't go to the Health and Human Services. It went to taxation, I believe. It was not ever even heard within that committee, which is kind of a interesting precedent for a bill that's actually being put forward by a committee. And so I think maybe that's a little indication of the power of the vape industry. SB 165, Mo Dennis's bill on obesity and height and weight measures in schools has moved forward, so that'll be going to the Assembly. So that was one of the, so that's one of the few that we had on our high priority list that still move in, and we'll hope that we get the height and weight measure there. Chief Brown already mentioned the CPR in school bill is still moving. One that is that we're neutral on, but I think of interest, is Amber Joyner's bill, AB 203, which is addressing the cemetery authority issues, and that one has passed out of the Assembly and going to the Senate. Ms. Joyner, or Assemblywoman Joyner, also had another bill, AB 348, that was for sex education in the schools, scientifically accurate, and that bill has made it out of the Assembly and is moving forward. AB 113, providing for nursing mothers in the workplace, was amended as we had wanted it to be, to remove the mediation role of the health district, and that one is moving forward. SB 122, that provides for an account for family planning, for funds to be distributed to family planning programs by the state, has passed. There's another bill that's exempt because it's a fiscal bill that would provide $1 million a year of funding toward that. That is also continuing because it's exempt. And then SB 233, that provides for prescriptions to be filled for 12 months of reproductive care products, or is still alive as well. The of note as well in some of the dead bills, the plastic bag ban did not move, so we were very concerned about a several $1 million fiscal impact that could have been on the health district to do all the enforcement for that. The fish pedicure bill also didn't move forward. We were concerned that we were supposed to be regulating fish pedicures, and we didn't think the fish would survive the disinfectant in the water. But anyway, we're glad to see that that one's not moving forward right now. It would have been difficult for us. But I'd be happy to take any questions. I'm sure I've missed a bunch of.
Dr. Hess looked like he was surprised. The fish pedicure, so they eat the dead skin off your feet. They're naturally. I have heard of that. Yeah. I want one of those. So. Oh, that we're giving fish pedicures. Councilman Dare.
I actually just saw that the other day for the first time. It actually is a huge, you put your feet in it, and they just
They're little
chew on
tiny
your
fish.
feet.
But they're little. They don't chew on your. They're this big.
Well, they could get big.
They could get big.
What about the?
Dr. Novak.
I'm sorry, SB 236, which is smoke marijuana anywhere you want to.
I just saw in the paper or on the news on that one, so I haven't had a chance to research that, but it sounds like that one is moving forward, and it would be it would take the form of, and it requires local government approval, but it would take the form of a marijuana social club,
Right.
sort of a place, and that what I saw said there would be several probably on the Strip.
What about the concert arenas? That's, to me, is more concerning is out in the public.
I haven't had a chance to research. Maybe, I don't know if Mr. Brown has looked at it more closely, but from what I saw in the news coverage, it sounded like it would not be a public venue like that. It would be a club that somebody belonged to. And it's Senator Sagerblum's bill, and what he's trying to address is providing, if we have marijuana tourism and it's legal to use marijuana, providing a place where people can go where it's legal for them to use it, because otherwise there's a problem at the hotels and bed and breakfasts and that sort of stuff if that's the only place that people can use marijuana if they're visiting.
Dr. Hess, you have never smelled marijuana at a concert you've been to?
No, Dr. Hess is not.
I mean, Dr. Novak, and you too, Mr.
I can't say as I enjoyed it, but
Well, it's not a new problem, is what my point is. Okay, any other questions?
I love that it's legal.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's move on to our staff programs.
Actually, if it's all right, could the board accept the report?
Oh, yes.
Because
Would
this
you-
has
do you
got
guys
our
mind-
positions on the bills.
Make a motion to accept as presented.
Second?
We have a motion by Brown, a second by Dare. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. 14A, staff reports and program updates. Air quality management, Ms. Albee, the director.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. Charlene Albee, Director of Air Quality Management. I did want to just provide an update on our ozone designation. We have been informed by Region 9 that during the process of the review of our exceptional events packages, apparently we are, as far as they know, the only jurisdiction in the country that our attainment is hanging on the approval of our exceptional events packages. So their concurrence with the elimination of the smoke impact data is going to be the fine line that determines if we're attainment or not. Based on that, they are seeing a tremendous amount of interest from headquarters. Washington, D.C. is Office of Air Quality Planning and Standards is actively reviewing our submittals. We did just recently complete the 2015 the exceptional event package for 2015 just completed the public review period with no comments, which was a relief to us and them especially. They are very sensitive to legal challenges of these packages. A lot of challenges come out of Phoenix with the dust. So they were afraid that we were going to have the same problem with the smoke impacts. So the 2016 package was actually submitted on April the 14th, and that was ahead of the actual May 30th deadline. We worked with Region 9 to try to get it expedited so that they could have it and do a concurrent review while it's out to public review. So that's actually available on our website at ourcleanair.com, and public comment on that closes on May 14th. So with that being submitted, we're cautiously optimistic that that one will go through also, and hopefully we will be able to be designated as attainment.
Thank you, Ms. Albee.
I'm available if you have any other
questions for
questions.
Ms. Albee? Thank you for your hard work and your chewing on your nails, I'm sure. I appreciate you. Item 14B, Community and Clinical Health Services, Mr. Cutts.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the Board of Health, Steve Cutts for the record. And I wanted to show you a video that our chronic disease prevention program worked with KPS3 to produce. So we hopefully will be able to see it and hear it today.
Let's work toward a smoke-free Nevada, where students pass pencils, not cigarettes. And our neighbors share recipes, not secondhand smoke. A community where people get together for lunch breaks instead of smoke breaks. And where our parks are littered with flowers, not cigarette butts. As a community, let's work toward clean breezes that lift our kites and fresh air that fills our lungs. Together, we can create a smoke-free Nevada.
That's great.
Yeah, we were very happy with that. We also have print media, and it's on the radio as well. I've heard it a number of times on the radio. Other than that, I have nothing else to add, though I do have Jennifer Howell here, who she is the author of our program update for National STD Awareness Month. So if you had any questions with the report in general or specifically for STD, Ms. Howell is here today with us.
Thank you very much. Any questions on? Great job. Always good job, Ms. Howe. Appreciate you and your role that you play in this community.
She does great work.
She's a
Thank
rock
you.
star, I know.
She is.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Environmental Health Services, the acting director, Mr. Kevin Dick.
All right.
This better be good, is right.
I have nothing further to add.
Okay,
Unless you have any questions.
thank you, great report. Any questions for him for the environmental health? Okay. Item D, I do see that Lei Chen is in the audience. She's here on behalf of Dr. Todd for the Epidemiology and Public Health Preparedness Division.
Madam Chair and member of board, and I'm Lei Chen, Epidemiology Program Manager on behalf of Dr. Todd. And so I really don't have updates or additional things to add to the report you are having. So, but
Okay.
I'm here to
Any
answer
questions?
any questions.
For Dr. Chen? Dr. Chen, you're doctor, yes?
Yes.
All right, thanks, Dr. Chen.
Okay. Thank you.
District Health Manager,
All
do you have
right.
anything to add to your report, sir?
I just, I wanted to touch on a few things. The North Valley's flooding and just the standing water flood sort of situation that we have throughout the county. We have started doing some mosquito trapping up around the North Valleys. We've never done mosquito trapping this early in the season before. So we don't really have anything to compare our results to from previous years. We have very limited chemical and budget for this fiscal year for doing any larviciding for mosquito abatement. We currently have a budget that would cover a helicopter application for 250 acres. In the North Valleys, we've got 3 different lakes up there. The good news is that White Lake is too alkaline to support a mosquito population. The bad news is that between Silver and Swan Lake, we've got about 970 acres just with that. Looking at the southern part of the county, starting up there and moving down, our vector program has identified about 3,180 acres of water that we've got standing in the community. The good news is that the Washoe Valley portion is too cold right now to support mosquito activity. Much as I'm looking forward to what's forecasted to be a nice weekend this weekend, from the mosquito side of things, we're better off actually if things are cooler coming up. So I should add to the 250 acres that we currently have that we can apply for larvicide in this fiscal year. We've got 3 1,000-acre applications that are budgeted for next fiscal year. But even, again, with that, we've got standing water that's 3 times that amount. So I heard a report this morning from our vector program that not only are we concerned about mosquitoes, but more flea and rodent activity with more grasses for rodents to eat and more better environment for fleas. So we could be talking some plague cases. It's my response is, so I'm right telling people this is a First Testament sort of thing we're looking at here. I don't know what the Mormon cricket projection is, but we're not going to be able to keep up with the situations that we've got to control them, and we need to be, and we are actively messaging for people to take personal responsibility to address standing water that they've got on their property, to get rid of any breeding areas that they can, to take the precautions of making sure their screens are repaired, that they're wearing long sleeve clothing and pants during the high mosquito activity hours around dawn and dusk, mosquito repellent, staying indoors if they can do that to avoid them. They just can't expect the health district to take care of this act of God, which is what it is really, that we're seeing out there in the community. We are working with the county to try to secure some additional funding that we could use to support larviciding. We have not been able to do that yet. Commissioner Jung made some comments at the Board of Commissioners meeting on Tuesday, encouraging the county to provide some of that support. We used to get additional support for the vector program through about a half penny of property tax that we no longer receive due to some of the fiscal measures that were instituted during the recession. So our program is smaller than it was previously, And we're seeing that now. So I just wanted to let people know that's a concern that we have. We're working on the messaging. You may have people expressing concern about mosquitoes to you. We're limited in what we can do. Then on the environmental health services management, and I have an item in here on the Band Land Development User Group. We had a meeting with them last Thursday, and there are a lot of concerns about how the application of the Nevada Administrative Code around community water systems is impacting development, and what could we do to try to make things work better while we're still protecting the quality, our community water systems and the quality of our drinking water. Since then, had a meeting with NDEP earlier this week, and then NDEP came to the meeting that we had again out at the Builders this morning, and we talked about these issues further. I think we made a little bit of progress, but our next step is to sit down with NDEP and Tumwa and work to further resolve the issues. But if anybody's hearing concerns about what's going on with the health district and our requirements with impacts on housing developments, we're a little bit stuck in the middle because we're responsible for compliance of the state administrative code around these issues, but we don't have primacy. The state does, and we can't do something that they are not in agreement with. So we're trying to highlight the concerns that are out there and work with them to try to resolve those issues. And then on the a couple other things. We had a event on the 29th of March for the county health rankings, and that was very well attended. And we're continuing to be in the top 3 and 4 counties in Nevada when you look at health outcomes and health factors. We had a good discussion around that. On the Truckee Meadows Healthy Communities side of things, we were awarded the Silver Syringe Award as Community Partner of the Year by Immunize Nevada, their annual meeting for our family health festivals and the immunizations that we do there. We've made a commitment, Truckee Meadows Healthy Communities, to support a RAM event, remote area medical, that's going to be at the Boys and Girls Club on 9th Street at the end of September, September 28th to October 1st. You may recall there was a RAM event several years ago that was held at Hug High School, and what RAM is that they bring in dental equipment and optometry. They do eye care and eyeglasses. So they've got a van that they manufacture 200 to 300 eyeglasses a day out of. So people that don't have adequate dental and eye coverage can come and get free treatment. And people start lining up before midnight for services the next day for this. So we've got Renown and St. Mary's are all in and working to support this. We'll be recruiting dentists, and I wanted to talk with you, Dr. Novak, offline about this too, if you can be a champion for us and help out with some of that. But they rely on local doctors. There are also a lot of volunteers that come in. We'll be utilizing our Medical Reserve Corps to assist with volunteering and recruiting other people, several hundred volunteers for this event to help people move it in the right way. But I think it'll be very beneficial for our community to provide that. And then on housing, we had Truckee Meadows Healthy Communities co-sponsored a workforce housing community forum on April 13th at Reno High School. We had several hundred people show up, primarily real estate, building, development type community. We wanted to engage in conversation. We had some great panelists there, from a city council member from Denver talking about how they were working on affordable housing issues, a multi-generational family housing, focusing on foster care kids in Portland. That is just a fantastic model that they're doing up there. And a couple of developers that just provided a lot of information about how we could leverage resources and assets in the community to get more out of what we got if we're all working together. And Truckee Meadows Healthy Communities is working forward as a convener to try to bring the different groups together and try to get more unified plan across the 3 jurisdictions that could be worked on.
Excuse me.
Mayor Sheevy was at the April 13th event and talked about Reno's commitment for affordable housing, and I see a lot going on recently there. But anyway, we'll continue to work forward around the housing issue and see if we can provide backbone support for a collective impact around that for the community. I think that's the items I wanted to highlight.
Thank you very much, Mr. District Health Officer. Item number 15 is board comments. Does any, oh, sorry, oh yeah, Dr. Hess. Sorry.
I'm a little worried about funding, and this is probably way premature, but with this potential for a mosquito and an insect-borne or vector-borne disease outbreak, are there other possible funding sources first for prevention? I mean, could you go to like the disaster area fund and get something for at least that White Lake or that Lemon Valley Lake? And are there other sources we could tap into if we do have an outbreak of Zika virus or something?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Aaron Keniston, the county emergency manager, was following up with DEM about any potential for state or federal funding through them that could help support this. He didn't find much information. I did talk with Nikki Aker, who's the head of Carson City Health and Human Services, about this, and she said that they are, her understanding is they're exploring it and seeing if maybe they can get somebody from CDC involved that could help to try to move some resources. And they're facing similar concerns and problems, of course, down in Carson Valley and everywhere.
Everywhere.
Out to Walker.
It's going to get
Yes.
worse before it gets better. Any other questions? Okay, now we are on, and I'm going to start down here. Dr. Hess, do you have any announcements or issues for future agendas?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Anyone?
I have
Yeah.
one question.
Councilman Dare.
I'm going to be going to a small forum where they talk about the opioid problem. I haven't heard us talk about that, and maybe you haven't before I got here. Is there any updates or something I can get from somebody as I walk in? I can feel informed, and then also, it seems to be on the rise. So, is there anything we're doing? It doesn't have to be answered today, but maybe we can bring it back to the next conversation.
I have some resources I can forward to you.
Thank you.
I have one thing, and that is how active and what is the role of RTC in addressing our air quality issues? And how much of a partner are they? And how much more could they possibly be doing, considering they have the biggest largesse of money in this whole region, to help us address the air quality problems that if we get at unattainment, there are major economic impacts on us. So I want to see how we can get them activated to help us with our air quality.
Okay.
Anybody else? Did that shake anything loose? Okay. Any public comment, Miss Laura Rogers? Okay, thank you. Then we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.